Hello and welcome back to Fullerton College Print 75 and 77 Pre-Press. This is Professor Ben Hewitt, and we're going to look at how to save PDFs in the big three of the Adobe Cloud that are the printing programs in no particular order, or perhaps in ascending importance. We're using Photoshop, Illustrator, and last and definitely most important, InDesign. So I wanted to take a moment to show you how to do these and what capabilities these PDFs have when you make them. First off, in Photoshop. In Photoshop, to create a PDF, you simply need to do a save as. So here we are with my composite photo we made for the Photoshop practice with the moonlander landing on Wallace and Gromit's cheese moon. So up here, I'm going to do a file save as, or Command-Shift-S, and you go down, 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 and Photoshop PDF is an option. So we'll just choose that. And we say, okay, you can choose to keep layers and things like that. Yes, I already made a copy earlier. I forgot to throw it away. Settings can override. That's fine. We're going to use high quality print, not modified, and we save PDF. It tells you that you can preserve Photoshop editing capabilities, but earlier versions might not be able to handle it. Yes, please. Cool. We're going to close this, and we're going to do a file open, and we're going to open up the version that is the PDF, just to prove this is the version that we actually use. This is the one we just saved. Opening up the PDF saved Photoshop version, you'll notice that you still have the layers and the ability to turn them off and on and move them around and do the same types of editing you would have done if it had been a PSD file. Now we're over in Illustrator. Make sure that's correctly shared. Yes, we're over in Illustrator, and I of course have doodled myself, or am working on doodling just a crude little biplane drawing illustration. Hopefully I'll make a good one eventually. Anyways, I'll show you what we can do over here. PDF is so close to AI and file type and is so native here in Illustrator that it's a file save as. Let's go ahead and make this thing a PDF. Poof. Save. Illustrator default is fine if you're going to keep working on Illustrator, but there's also other versions you can save this as. It brings up the menu of what types of PDFs to save as. We'll look at this in a little more detail in a minute when we do InDesign, but here in Illustrator, Illustrator default honestly leaves the most for later fixability and workability. So we say save, and as a PDF here, those are locked layers. You basically, even though it's a PDF is how it's being saved, every single vector object, every layer, every effect that you would have used in Illustrator is 100% present and accounted for in PDF. In practice, although I'm sure there are some technical details beyond anything I've seen, and I've seen a lot, in practice, they're almost interchangeable when you're using Illustrator between a PDF and an AI file. So sometimes it's worth saving a little bit of file space and using the PDF. Again, if you do a save as here and convert your AIs into PDFs for including in other documents and for printing, you do not lose your vectors, and they still print as cleanly as they would have as if you printed straight from Illustrator. Sometimes cleaner, because printing from Illustrator does involve a PostScript conversion, while saving the PDF and loading the PDF onto your RIP is the better way to do it. All right, let's jump over to our last little demo here. On to my favorite program of what we're working with in this class, InDesign. InDesign is extremely robust in what it can do, and what it can do translates extremely well into PDF. Remember that as a page layout program, the purpose of InDesign is to take pictures, text, graphics, and put them all together to make layouts as if you're doing physical paste up with rubber cement and X-Acto knives on a light table, the way it used to be. Anyways, when you create a PDF, because the PDF as a container file contains the same types of input elements as a InDesign file, it preserves itself rather well. Let me show you how you do it. There are a couple ways of getting to it, and I always just do export, file export or Command E, but there's also, you can go straight to the PDF presets and choose one from the PDF point here. Unlike other programs, and even unlike other page layout programs, InDesign generates PDFs properly and does not do them, 1A, there we go. It does not do them the way other programs do with PostScript. Everything is directly converted, or not converted, just basically taken and translated into PostScript and translated into the PDF version of PostScript, not into PostScript. That's a bit of a flub on my part. Sorry there. So it does not do the PostScript conversion. Anything that would have been converted by PostScript is not. It's all preserved and just passed on neatly. Again, the thing that I love about PDF is the same thing that I love about InDesign in the first place, which is not what it does, but what it does not do. The fact that it does not change things on you, and it just kind of preserves what you've made and passes it along to the press for you, is delightful. So we'll do this. We say save. You have multiple versions of things you can do. Even within PDF, there's interactive versus print. This is a print class, right? So I think we all know which one to choose. It brings up the export PDF menu, which I'll talk about briefly, but this class and its successor class goes into much more detail, excruciating, nauseating detail about every single possible change you can make. But let me go through a couple of the highlights of the ones I like to use. First off, press quality is kind of your default. I prefer a high quality print. That preserves better imaging, and the image compression is a little bit less aggressive on forcing down your DPIs and BPIs, and it keeps everything a little bit crisper and nicer. So high quality print with some changes. You can right here choose the pages. If you want to do all the pages in a whole booklet, you can do it. Or if you want to pick and choose, if you've made hundreds of business cards of different names, each on their own page in a multi-page document, which is a valid way of building things, you could just choose a range and tell it which page you want it to do, page 2, page whatever. Page 2 to 3, let's do that. You can choose, if you want to create them as separate PDFs or as the same PDF, you can export a whole book as individual pages automatically. You can include a lot of different things. I'm not going through all of them, like I said. Compatibility. The older the version of Acrobat, the less dynamic the PDF is, but the more compatible it is. So you lose some of the fancier features and some of the crazier capabilities for the ability to be opened on an older machine. And honestly, as cool as high tech is, a lot of times you're stuck dealing with some low tech thing out there. The old saying and the platitude that you're tired of hearing about, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link is very much true about software and computer environments too. You can have the greatest graphics computer in the world doing your designs, but if the raster image processor is from the 80s, guess what speed your project is working at? So we have that. You can mess with compression. I don't normally. I like the typical ones that are built, the defaults built into high quality print are pretty good. It makes sure that any images that are extremely high get knocked back down to 300 dots per inch. The compression, it can use JPEG compression, or it can use zip compression, or it can do none. It won't even compress them. You can choose all sorts of things on here. You'll notice that monochrome images have a different setting than color and grayscale. That's because when you don't have the other colors and gray tones to hide your edges, the edges become much more visible. So for monochrome, like line art type stuff, you gotta have a higher resolution or people will notice that it looks kind of jaggy. But the jaggies get hidden in photos. You don't see them there so much. Marks and bleeds, this is the one I really wanted to show you of all the things. This is my seatbelt light that comes on when you start your car right here. Use document bleed settings. I just clicked it. And as you see down here, and I'm going to go back, I don't always do it linear, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, and all that good stuff. So down below, you can see that it shows the bleed as, first off, I can't change it. Hopefully the mic is picking up my loud click, click, clicking sounds. Once you've used the document bleed settings, whatever you set up in your document setup is what shows up here. Why I like this setting so much is it keeps me honest. It's one last fail-safe for me to take a look and say, did I include bleed or did I totally forget that? And if it shows up as 0.125 and I know it's a bleed file, a bled file, like the one I'm doing here, then I'm like, great, I did it. Or if it shows up as 0 and I'm just doing a white bordered page that has nothing, it's just black text on white paper, then sure, no problem. Up above, printer's marks. That's me slapping your hand. Don't use a whole lot of these. Use with caution. A lot of presses have their own marks they want to use. You may think it sounds really helpful to drop on page information and registration bars and color bars and bleed marks. And oftentimes those change from press to press. There's specific marks and specific color bars depending on what equipment is being output on and depending on what color management system, if any, they're using. They may want, or you may want to use non-standard bars. For instance, if you're doing a G7 color management series, you're going to want to make sure that you use G7 type color targets, because those use specific known shades of color and known mixtures of CMYK that it wants to measure, and definitely certain gray values it really wants to look at. The standard ones don't do that, so don't use those. However, crop marks is nice. Be nice to your finishing department. Their job is hard enough. Don't make them have to guess where the edge is. Crop marks, yes. Bleed marks, no. You don't need to see the edge of the bleed. That's silly. It's overkill. It makes the file document size a little bit too big. It adds more page size to include these marks. So let's just include crop marks, and that's all you want there. Output, color conversion should almost always be no conversion. No conversion means whatever is in the file stays in the file. Whatever ICCs are used, get passed along. You'll notice below the inclusion policy, include tagged source files. Don't turn those off. If an artist or a photographer has spent the time to actually properly tag their image with ICC profiles to ensure that their artwork's original intent comes through into the final product, who are you to go through and change their settings without significant amounts of talking to them and weighing the options with them and letting them make the decision for their work? I don't really play with this one. You can subset fonts and other things. We'll talk about that later. Security, honestly, this is not good for print production. Security is great if you're sending someone a proof or a hidden document you don't want somebody printing. But if you're trying to create for output, adding any layer of security is just going to make a headache for you and your team. And the summary tells you all the things. You want to go through and look and see what it showed previously. So again, let's go back through really quickly on this. The too long didn't read if you skipped ahead to right now. I should have gone back and told you that. Hey, skip ahead to this point in the video if you don't want to listen to everything. But here it is. In general, you choose which pages you want to use, all or some of them. You can export as spreads or pages. We didn't quite talk about that. Spreads means like when you open a book and you see a page on the left and a page on the right stuck together, that's a spread. Pages means you see page 1 and page 2 as separate pages when you're scrolling. Again, you can choose separate or the same PDF. I don't go for a whole lot of this stuff to change a lot of things. I like to leave that mostly as it's set. You might also notice that the changes I've made have changed it from high quality print to high quality print, parentheses, modified. This is like that little pop-up button on the top of your jam jars. After you buy them at the store, you open it, goes pop, it tells you it's been opened. The modified lets you know that someone has messed with the settings. If you're working in a public workspace with other people using the same computers, you may never, ever, 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 ever trust a modified preset. Always go back to default and make your own changes. If you are working on your own computer or a computer that is only yours at a job, then you can not only do this, but go a step further and you can actually, whoops, I think I just redid all that by clicking. You can actually make your own version and save your preset. Down below, there's a save preset button. So if you have things that you always print, at my last job, we had one and we just named it the name of the company. We were Unique Print, so it was just called Unique. Up at the top, whenever we wanted to do our own output for our press, we knew exactly what it wanted, so why re-enter those values every time? Compression, again, it tells you what it's going to change the text, the image sizes to if they're too big, and you set what they are and what too big is. Marks and bleeds, crop marks, yes. Printer's marks, no. Document bleed settings, yes. Output, don't touch. We just looked at it. Advanced, really don't touch unless you have specific reasons to do so, and we haven't gotten to those yet. Security, don't mess with that unless you're trying to create a password protected file, which as a receiver of them in the past is a real pain in the butt. Don't do that to your poor pre-press team. And summary tells you what you've done. Export, and that'll create the document for you. Thanks for watching. This has been how to export PDFs from InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop, though not in that order. Talk to you guys soon.